Yeah, hello.
What?
I thought you dead in Traptrix Forest.
I knew this was gonna happen, so I pre-recorded myself.
I think you came from the wrong anime.
Eudemon.
Before we begin today's topic, because a lot of people would have argument, let's establish what anti-meta is.
What's with this build-up?
An anti-meta deck is any deck that is built to counteract the most popular decks being played. According to the biggest Master Duel Chinese tournament, the top 32 decks consist of over 53% Spright.
Wow, that's almost Tier 0 format.
And according to my own climb experience this season, 2 out of every 3 games are Spright variant.
So, if we build a deck that counters Spright variant, it becomes the anti-meta?
That's correct. The deck we are going to introduce is also used by a Chinese top ranker, which he 9 win streak to Diamond 1 within the first day of rank reset. In my playing, I also managed to hit Diamond in one sitting on the first day of the reset.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, given you're going against other top rankers speedrunning.
If I wanted, I could also climb to day 1 Diamond myself. It is not hard to get there with this win rate given enough time, but, you know, real-life responsibilities and work plus video editing. It takes a good chunk of my time already. I just want to emphasize this deck is stupid strong in the current meta. And here is the deck list.
Isn't this just another meta?
I knew someone would say that. First, that statement would be true pre-ban list. With the new changes, their number has significantly reduced. And even if that's true, according to the definition we previously discussed, it doesn't need to be a non-meta deck, as long as we counter the majority of decks being played right now.
Doesn't Spright also has Runick variant?
Since the ban list, the dominant variant right now are Dark Beckoning Beast, Pure with Swap Frog, and Evil Twin.
Are there other decks that work well in this meta?
Yes, decks like Eudemon, Ricka, 60-card variant brand all have favorable matchups. In the case of Eudemon, it also uses Floodgate variant, so I'm not sure if it can count as a replacement if you don't like this deck. Also important to note that none of above mentioned is as effective at countering Spright as this.
So what makes this deck particularly good at playing against Spright?
For one, since all Spright monsters are Thunder type, there can be only one shuts down their combo complete. Same goes for skill drain. Since it is so easy going first, basically just search and place Floodgate. The gameplay guide will focus on what to do going second.
Nice! I was gonna ask about going second.
The limited Amano is replaced with Inspector Border.
His effect text is confusing to read.
In short, while on the field, both players can activate max number of monster effects equal to different types of extra monsters on board. This includes XYZ, Fusion, Link, and Synchro. Take this duel as example, even though there are 2 fusion monsters on board, opponent can only activate monster effect once, regardless of how many fusions they have. So even with Inspector, they can still trigger Mirror Jade to get rid of it. In that previous example, Iwano would altogether disable all their monster effects. So you can already see the downside of Inspector compared to Iwano. Even with that, it generally still works since people tend to put out multiple of the same type. And then it also doesn't bounce back to hand, unlike Iwano. Since most decks rely on main deck monsters to get to their extra deck monster, simply having it on the field would shut down those lines. In addition, Inspector would still allow you to use Runick monster effects. Since they are all fusion type, note that the type counts both fields, which means having it on field will enable the opponent to use monster effect a minimum 1 time. In some gameplays you might see me leaving fusion on the field. It was probably my early gameplay when I just crafted this guy. Generally advised against doing so if the situation allows. And then the crazy amount of draw power, which is what allowed you to tap into your Floodgate, and being able to out-resource opponent. One thing to note is both Demise and Duality lock you out of special summon. Lastly, don't forget the Pinpoint Disrupt of Runick spell, and back row protections of Hyujin.
The latest decklist link is included in the description.
Lastly, we are aware people hate this deck to the bone, but this video is about to unbias to bring you the fastest deck to climb to Diamond 1. And let's be honest, you all want to know the strongest deck. You just don't want to play against one.
Let's jump into some gameplay guide.
We have prepared 3 walkthroughs going against Runick with different hands, all of them from going second. Don't get me wrong, since we run a lot of traps and normal spells, this is go first deck, so when you win coin flip, go first. This is to demonstrate to you how to destroy meta in worst case scenario. Looks like we are going against the pure variant with Frog. This gameplay focus on breaking their strongest board without a Wano or Start with Upstart and see what life gives us. Looks like opponent chose to pull Smasher instead of Starter to get Carrot, since majority of decks now are monster focus. Pulling red with blue counters more decks in current meta. Well, not against us. You generally want to start with lesser important spell if you anticipate disruption. Use Duality to dig us out of the trouble. Since opponent use mix of water, fire, dark attribute, if we can bait out their disrupts on next match, we can lock them out using Guzzin. Since we have 2 fields on hand, place it and trigger for draw. This triggers opponent smashers to remove field. They generally run Nightmare Unicorn, so before placing second field, let's grab Flashing Fire to bait out IP. Generally, it is better idea to target IP, but because Elf protects monsters from target effect to where she points to, we target Elf, which trigger opponent to use IP to dodge the effect. With the known disrupts gone, we can now safely place second field. Then use Smithing Storm banish to up to number of cards on opponent's field. And most importantly, trigger field draw 3. With this hand, the correct play is Summon Inspector, set both floodgates, and target destroy their back row next turn, because we already triggered soft once per turn draw, and they can already trigger that set card, so there is no need to rush. Unless they just set it this turn, then you might want to choose to destroy it right away, before they have the chance to use it. Since most decks currently in meta are heavily monster focus, having a Wano in hand really helps a lot on breaking their board. Also, since Sprites put out lot of low-level, link or rank monsters, you can actually just use a Wano to run them over. You might incline to use Runick spells right away, but that would lock you out of battle phase. And remember, you can trigger them during the battle. Start by simply normal summon, because both IP and Elf has text specifically says only in main phase, which means the turn player has first action on that specific phase. So if you use anything else beforehand, they would be able to trigger their link monsters. After we done with our normal spells, go into battle and punch them. Smashers here is fine. Before ending the battle phase, use Flashing Fire to destroy Elf. Again, Elf effect can only trigger during main phase, therefore we lock them out of revive from graveyard. Next, let's trigger our draw by special summoning Hyujin. Because Spright is all Thunder type, Rivalry is not effective against them. Dump it to grab field, we also effectively shrinks the deck down for cards we want to draw. Also, we can chain block using Hyujin to protect field draw. Oh, this is a Runick variant of Spright. Because this happened during the draw phase, we cannot use Dispelling here since it only works if opponent added card outside of draw phase. Trigger Golden Droplet, then Dispelling react to their add card effect. First we attempt to get rid of their field. We also need to swap these 2 cards in hope to get more useful ones. Note that I purposely did not flip Guzzin right away, which allows them to get blue out. This is fine, they now have to choose between Spright or Runick monsters. Since Hyujin is light attribute, this means even though their extra zone is open, they cannot summon her for back row protection. This plays into our Runick destruction nicely. Now use it to destroy opponent's fountain. With their recovery gone, opponent surrenders. Next, let's take a look at a start hand with Inspector. Looks like this is another pure variant Spright. With Carrot out on the field, it might be a little tricky for us. Looks like they chose to dump to XYZ for double link. This works in our favor because with Inspector it means they can only activate monster effect once. Again, start with Upstart. It's generally good idea to save Ash for target search or multiple draw, instead of a random draw, but you do you. Mistake here is not summon Inspector right away, because the counter only start when it is on field, and lot of time opponent doesn't understand Inspector effect, would waste their only activation on insignia stuff costing them the game. For example here, they trigger IP to special summon Unicorn hoping to bounce Inspector, but nope, you already used up your one-time monster effect. Battle phase and punch Elf. On next turn, they also won't be able to use Carrot now because Unicorn is a link free. Summon Hyujin now would bump their monster effect allowance to 2 next turn, because the field now has a link and a fusion extra deck monster, but with Floodgate they won't be able to use them anyway. Here I forgot special summoning would lock me out of Demise. Either getting rid of Carrot to prevent Spright level 2 summon, or Unicorn which cannot be destroyed by battle would work in our favor. Use Slumber to stop opponent from attacking. Looks like they had double Ash on hand, maybe that's why the usage last turn. One thing to note that cards returned to deck by Fountain Effect is placed at the bottom of the deck. You can bypass this by shuffling the deck. I have covered how this works in previous video, please check out above. Set spell and trigger Demise to draw until we have 3. Opening of the Spirit Gate. Looks like this is Dark Beckoning Beast variant. Its effect allowed them easily put out 2 fiends on field. Since it is continuous spell, which require to be on field to resolve, chain destruction before they can search. If you have card that adds specific card, in this case terraforming, you want to use them first before your random draw, just in case you drew the searchable card which would render the spell useless. I am just using Flashing Fire to trigger Fountain Draw. Totally didn't forget IP protects it from effect destruction. Make it a habit of entering battle phase even though you know it is going to be skipped, because the skip counter won't count unless you do so manually. Otherwise, for whatever reason you want to attack, it would lock you out permanently until you do so. Since Runick Fong destruction effect won't kill Unicorn, special summon Hyujin here because she will return to deck upon destruction. Therefore we would have infinite wall to protect ourselves, and opponent cannot break through because they are locked into one monster by our floodgate. Now all we need to do is mill their deck empty. Here is an example on what happened when you go first. We use up Fountain to attempt to dig for floodgate. Little unfortunate not getting any. But as you can see just with Inspector, it shuts down Spright completely from making board. Remainders are additional gameplays with occasional commentary. Thank you for watching. Because opponent enter battle phase right away, before the end of battle phase. In fear of evenly match, let's use up Runick spells and draw so we can minimize our loss. If you looked at the opponent's cards we banished, it is another Spright, you probably would incline to keep field from evenly. The most important thing for us now is prevent ourselves from dying, so I chose to keep their can be only, which would shut down their combo. Oh boy, the second evenly, again, keeping their can be only to stay alive. Opponent wants to save Carrot for more important choke point, but it turns out backfire. Because we manually entered and skipped battle phase last turn, since we did not use any Runick spells since then, which would lock us out of battle phase restriction, we can now battle and punch out with Rock. A tip to trigger Demise effect first before Rock so it doesn't get discarded. You can find this in your game setting. No Zeus for you.
she's so cute. Is that your child?
Do you watch anime?
Yes, of course.
Papa!